How to divide property in a Texas divorce. Hi, and welcome to today's video. My name is Lena Nguyen, and I'm a divorce lawyer. Before we dive in, a quick disclaimer. The information in this video is intended for general educational purposes only and should not be construed as legal advice. Divorce laws can vary based on your unique circumstances, so I always recommend consulting with a qualified attorney who can give you personalized advice for your situation. Now let's take a look at what we're going to cover today. In this video, we're going to talk about how property is divided in a Texas divorce. We'll break down the concepts of community property and separate property, which is critical to understanding how your assets will be handled. We'll also discuss how the court divides assets and debts and why a fair division doesn't always mean a 50-50 split. Finally, I'll share some practical tips on how to organize your financial documents to make the entire process smoother and to ensure that everything is accounted for. Let's get started. Community property versus separate property. One of the first things you need to understand when it comes to dividing property in a Texas divorce is the concept of community property versus separate property. Texas is a community property state, meaning that most property acquired during the marriage is considered jointly owned by both spouses and will be divided between them. However, property that was acquired before the marriage or gifted to one spouse alone is generally considered separate property, and it remains the property of that spouse. Let's break this down even further. Community property includes assets that were acquired during the marriage, regardless of which spouse's name is on the title or account. This can include real estate, vehicles, bank accounts, retirement accounts, and any debts incurred during the marriage. Even if only one spouse's name appears on a title or account, the law generally considers it community property if it was acquired during the marriage. This is a key point to remember because the court will typically divide these assets in a way that it deems fair, though not necessarily equal. Here are some examples of community property. The family home. If you and your spouse bought a home together during the marriage, that home will be considered community property, even if the deed only has one spouse's name on it. Bank accounts. Accounts that are opened or funded during the marriage are also generally considered community property, including checkings, savings, and investment accounts. Retirement accounts. These include 401ks, pensions, IRAs, and other retirement savings accounts that accrued during the marriage are also considered community property, even though they are in the name of just one spouse. Keep in mind that community property does not necessarily mean a 50-50 split. The court divides it based on what is considered just and right, considering a number of factors. Separate property. Separate property includes anything that one spouse acquired before the marriage, as well as gifts or inheritances received by one spouse during the marriage. The most important thing to remember is that separate property does not get divided in a divorce unless it has been commingled with community property. Commingling happens when separate property becomes mixed with community property to the point where it's difficult to distinguish the two. Here are some examples of separate property. Assets owned before the marriage. For example, if one spouse owned a house before marriage, it is considered separate property even if the couple lived in it during the marriage. Gifts and inheritances. Any gifts or inheritances one spouse receives, whether during the marriage or before, are typically considered separate property, unless they are commingled with community funds, like putting inheritance money into a joint bank account. However, it's important to note that if a spouse uses separate funds to pay for community property, or if a gift is given to both spouses, the property could become community property. How assets and debts are divided. Now that we understand the difference between community and separate property, let's talk about how assets and debts are divided in a Texas divorce. Remember, Texas follows the principle of a just and right division, which means the court will divide the property fairly based on the circumstances, but not necessarily equally. Division of assets. The court looks at a variety of factors when determining how to divide property in a fair way. These factors include things like financial and non-financial contributions of each spouse, the length of the marriage, and each spouse's ability to support themselves post-divorce. The court's goal is to create a division that gives each spouse what they need to maintain a reasonable standard of living. Here are a few types of assets and how they are generally handled in divorce proceedings. Real estate. If you and your spouse own a home or other real estate, the court will decide who gets to keep it or how it should be sold. If one spouse keeps the home, the other may be compensated with other assets of equal value, such as savings or retirement accounts. Sometimes the court will order the home to be sold and the proceeds are split. Retirement accounts and pensions. Retirement funds earned during the marriage are considered community property. However, these assets require special handling because they might be in a long-term savings account, such as a 401k. Typically, these accounts are divided through a qualified domestic relations order, also known as a quadro, which allows the non-employee spouse to receive their share of the retirement funds without tax penalties. Business interests. Dividing business interests can be complicated, especially if one spouse owns a business that was started during the marriage. The court may need a professional valuation of the business to determine its value, and the non-owning spouse may receive compensation in the form of other assets. Division of debts. Just like assets, debts are considered community property and will be divided between the spouses. Community debt includes things like credit card balances, mortgages, car loans, and other loans taken out during the marriage. The goal is to allocate the debts in a way that is fair to both spouses based on their ability to pay. Common types of debts include mortgages and car loans. These are often community debts, so the court will decide who should take responsibility for them. Sometimes the court will allow the spouse who retains the house to also take on the mortgage, or the couple may agree to sell the property and divide the proceeds. Credit card debt and personal loans. If debts were incurred during the marriage for family expenses or purchases, they are typically considered community debts. However, if one spouse incurred debt for personal expenses or on behalf of their own business, it might be classified as separate debt. It's important to note that the division of debts may not be exactly 50-50. The court will consider things like income, earning potential, and the need for financial stability when making its decision. Tips for organizing financial documents. One of the best ways to ensure that you get a fair and smooth division of property is to get organized. The more organized you are with your financial documents, the easier it will be to prove your case and to ensure that all assets and debts are accounted for. Here are some practical tips for organizing your financial documents. Create a detailed list of assets and debts. Make a comprehensive list of all the property you and your spouse own, both community and separate. Be sure to include real estate, including the address and value of each property, vehicles, including cars, motorcycles, boats, and any other personal property, bank and investment accounts, including account numbers and balances, business interests if applicable, including any ownership stake, valuation reports, or business tax returns. For debts, list all debts including mortgages, car loans, credit card balances, student loans, and personal loans. Gather your financial statements. Having the right financial documents on hand will help establish the value of your assets and debts. Make sure you have tax returns for the last 3 to 5 years, pay stubs for the last 6 months to 1 year, bank statements for joint and separate accounts, and mortgage and loan statements, including balances and payment terms. Document the value of your assets. For assets like real estate, collectibles, or artwork, consider getting a professional appraisal to determine their value. This can help ensure that you get a fair division of assets. For retirement accounts, you'll need recent statements, and perhaps you may want to hire a professional financial expert to help assess their value and potential tax consequences. Be transparent and honest. It's crucial that you provide accurate and honest information about all your assets and debts. If one spouse hides assets or provides false information, it can negatively affect the division process. Additionally, dishonest behavior can hurt your credibility in court. Consider hiring a financial professional. If you have complex assets such as a business, large retirement accounts, or complicated investments, hiring a financial expert can be incredibly helpful. A financial professional can help you understand the full value of your assets and debts and assist in their proper division. Common mistakes to avoid. There are several common mistakes that people make during the property division process that can significantly affect the outcome of their divorce. Here are a few mistakes to avoid. Failing to fully understand the value of your assets and debts. It's easy to overlook certain assets, especially if you don't know how to properly value them. Don't focus only on the family home or cars. Remember to include things like retirement accounts, stocks, and any hidden or less obvious assets. Agreeing to an unequal division out of pressure. You might feel pressured to agree to an unequal division either because you want the divorce to be over or because your spouse is pushing you into it. Never agree to a division that doesn't feel fair. The court will help ensure that you receive a just division based on the circumstances, and you deserve to have your fair share. Neglecting to update beneficiaries. After your divorce, you must update the beneficiaries on your retirement accounts, life insurance policies, and other financial accounts. If you don't, your ex-spouse could still be entitled to those benefits even after the divorce is finalized. To recap, here's what we've covered in today's video. First, we discussed the difference between community property and separate property, and why understanding this distinction is crucial. Then we talked about how assets and debts are divided in a Texas divorce. The court strives for a just and right division, considering various factors such as earning capacity and contributions to the marriage. Finally, we reviewed how to organize your financial documents to ensure everything is accounted for and to avoid mistakes during the division process. Dividing property in a divorce can be complex, but with the right knowledge and preparation, you can navigate the process with confidence. If you're going through a divorce, it's important to consult with a qualified attorney to help guide you through the process. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave any questions you may have in the comments below. I'll see you next time, and good luck.